Okay, in this video, we are going to talk about hedonism, desire satisfaction theory, consequentialism, and utilitarianism. Okay, um, you see, in ethics, we study the good life, and we believe that it's common to say that people are seeking the good life. What they want is to seek what is good for them. Okay, and there are basically several theories that we can talk about. The first one is hedonism. Hedonism is basically the pleasure principle. Pleasure is what's good. Pain and suffering, it's bad. So if you are a hedonist, your life motto will be seek pleasure, avoid pain. This way of thinking is very attractive to many people because it appeals to our common sense. It appeals to us being humans. Okay. But nevertheless, there are several criticisms about this theory. One of them is that there are many instances in life that before you feel pleasure, you have to undergo pain and suffering first. Take, for instance, a mother about to give birth to her child. She has to experience tremendous amount of pain and suffering. But after that, I think no one can measure the kind of pleasure, happiness that the mother will feel. But she has to undergo a lot of pain first. And hedonists cannot account of that because they're just simply looking at things using pleasure. Everything is about pleasure. But life is complicated. There are many instances in life that before you feel pleasure, you have to feel a lot of pain first. Another theory is desire satisfaction theory. If you ask me, hedonism and desire satisfaction theory are two sides of a single coin. Okay. Desire satisfaction theory frames its philosophy this way. If you achieve or fulfill your desires, then it gives you pleasure or it gives you happiness. Then therefore you are satisfied. And if you're satisfied, that's good. Now, on the contrary, if you don't get what you want, if you're not able to achieve or obtain what you desire, it means your desires were frustrated. Therefore, you are not satisfied. So it's bad. Now, like hedonism, there could also be a lot of criticisms about desire satisfaction theory. One of them is that as human beings, it's really difficult for us to really understand ourselves. There are many instances in our lives that we desire this, we desire that, we desire a good car, a good home, a luxurious life. And then when the time comes that when we achieve all this stuff, we feel emptiness. Probably because in the process of acquiring all these things, relationships were severed. So you see, even if you're able to obtain your desire, still at the very end, you are not satisfied. Now, there's this another theory called consequentialism. Okay, consequentialism means that in order to know or to understand what is the good or what are the things to pursue, we need to look at the consequence. The example I have in mind will be, say, Robin Hood. Robin Hood is a thief, but he's a different kind of thief, a special thief, because he steals from the rich in order to give to the poor. Now, if you are a consequentialist, the way you will analyze Robin Hood's moral character is through the consequence of his actions and not through the act of stealing itself. Okay? Say, for example, if you look at it in the perspective of those who are poor, then it's good because Robin Hood was able to help the poor. But if you look at it in the perspective of those who were robbed, then it's bad because they were robbed. I mean, how could that be good? Okay. So that's consequentialism. Now, there are many variations of consequentialist theories, but one of the most prominent will be that of utilitarianism. You see, utilitarianism, its main proponent was Jeremy Bentham, but I think its greatest disciple was the student of Jeremy Bentham, John Stuart Mill. Well, if you're looking at Benthamite conceptions of utilitarianism, it is simply limited to quantifying the pleasures that we have. By the way, utilitarianism is heavily influenced by hedonism, so therefore utilitarianism also seeks pleasure. But there's a twist to it. Jeremy Bentham will frame utilitarianism in this way: the greatest good for the greatest number. Meaning to say, you have to maximize the goods that you have. You have to maximize your well-being. Okay? Utilitarians are known to be maximizers. But the question is, could we really aggregate the pleasures that we have in a particular society? Well, not really. That's the problem. Another criticism to the Benthamite conception of utilitarianism is, does the welfare of the society decided simply by sheer numbers? Say, for example, look at the Christians during the time of the ancient Roman Empire. They were persecuted. They were thrown into an arena where they were fed to lions, and the entire Roman population present there will laugh at it. Basically, there's the amount of pleasure that these Romans feel when they see these Christians being executed are tremendous. And yet, is that good? See, that's why John Stuart Mill will provide for us a better answer to it. For John Stuart Mill, it's not just simply the quantity of pleasure, but also the quality of pleasure that we should think about. He believes that there are higher forms of pleasure and there are lower forms of pleasure. And the only way to know that is to experience both. Now, certainly there are pleasures that are higher compared to other pleasures. How do we know that these are higher pleasures? If we are willing to trade other pleasures that we want for this something, then certainly that should be higher. Take for instance the example I gave a while ago about the Romans cheering for the Christians that are being brutally murdered in the arena. If you look at it simply through the lenses of quantity, then you might say the pleasure of this multitude of Romans is greater than the pain and suffering of these few Christians being murdered. But if you infuse the idea of John Stuart Mill about quality, you will realize what's the quality of pleasure being felt by these Romans cheering for the death and execution of these Christians. Well, certainly you will say it's a low kind of pleasure. So John Stuart Mill appeals to our human intelligence. He believes that the higher forms of pleasures are that of arts, music, poetry, science, philosophy, human intelligence. Thus, the famous quote from John Stuart Mill. He said, "It's better that a human being is dissatisfied than a pig satisfied." Now, what's the meaning of that? Well, it's simple. If you seek higher pleasures, there may be instances that you'll be frustrated, you feel pain, you will not be satisfied, and yet you continue to seek it. Why? Because you're a human being. You are an intelligent creature. who finds music, arts, poetry, philosophy, science, humanities very appealing should not be a pig. A pig is easy to satisfy. Just simply feed him, or let him drink, let him sleep, let him rest, caress him probably, and he's happy about it. But these are lower forms of pleasure. And human beings have higher forms of pleasure, the pleasures of the intellect. So when it comes to looking at pleasures in life, it will be better if we will not simply stick to quantity, but take into consideration quality. Thanks. Stay safe, everyone.